You want to know something funny? This morning I sat at my kitchen table and watched my 11-year-old grandson have a full-blown anxiety attack because his YouTube video didn't get enough views overnight. 11 years old. Stressed about views. I didn't say a word. I just poured my coffee and sat there. But inside I was gone. I was back in 1963, a little boy in Dayton, Ohio. And the only thing stressing me out was whether my dad would let me stay up late enough to watch Bonanza. My name is Harold. I'm 70 years old. And I want to talk to you today about something I think about more and more as I get older. Something that doesn't get talked about enough. What does it do to a person, to their mind, to their soul, when they grow up in one world and spend the second half of their life in a completely different one? Because that's what happened to us, the people born in the 60s and 70s. We were the last generation to grow up fully human, before the screens, before the noise, before all of it. And I think it shaped us in ways we don't fully understand yet. So sit with me a while. I've got coffee, and I've got some things to say. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. Small houses, big yards. My mother hung laundry on a line in the backyard. My father came home from work at the same time every single evening. After dinner, we'd sit on the porch, not doing anything special, just sitting, watching the fireflies come out. When I tell young people that, they look at me like I've described life on another planet. What do you mean you just sat there? What were you doing? Nothing. We were doing nothing. And it was magnificent. That stillness wasn't emptiness. It was full. Full of thought, full of imagination, full of the sounds of the neighborhood. Kids calling each other, lawn mowers in the distance, the far-off whistle of a train. That's where our psychology began to form. In that quiet, we learned patience before we ever knew the word. Saturday morning cartoons only came on Saturday. You couldn't rewind them. If you missed it, you missed it, and somehow that made every single episode feel like a gift. My brother Tommy, God rest his soul, he saved his allowance for 3 months to buy a model airplane kit. 3 months. He'd walk to the hobby shop downtown, hold that box like it was made of gold, bring it home and spend 2 weeks building it, carefully, patiently. He painted every piece by hand. That airplane sat on his shelf for years. He was proud of it in a way I've rarely seen anyone be proud of anything in the modern world. We valued things because they cost us something, not just money, time, effort, anticipation. Here's something I believe with every fiber of my being. Boredom is one of the most important experiences a child can have. I know how that sounds. Bear with me. Summer afternoons when I was 9 or 10, there was absolutely nothing to do. My mother would say, "Go outside." That was the full instruction. No activity plan, no screen to pick up, just go outside. The first 20 minutes were genuinely boring. We'd kick rocks, lie in the grass, wander around. But then something would spark. Bobby from down the street would show up with an idea. Let's build a dam in the creek. And suddenly we'd spend 4 hours engineering something out of mud and sticks, arguing about water flow, getting completely soaked and filthy and completely alive. That's what boredom produces. Creativity, problem solving, social improvisation. We didn't have entertainment delivered to us. We had to make it, and in making it, we developed something precious, an inner life. I had an imagination I could take anywhere. I could lie in bed at night and tell myself stories for an hour before falling asleep. I could sit through a long church sermon and be somewhere else entirely in my mind, building worlds, living adventures. Psychologists today talk about something called self-directed play and how critical it is for child development. We didn't have a name for it. We just called it Tuesday. The generation growing up now, and I say this with real compassion, they're being robbed of that. Every moment of boredom is immediately fixed with a screen, so they never build that muscle, that capacity to sit quietly with themselves and find that there's actually someone interesting in there. Let me tell you about something we had that I genuinely grieve. The word is community, but not the way it's used now. Online community, social media community. No, real community, physical, imperfect, messy, real. Our neighborhood was its own little world. Everybody knew everybody. Mrs. Patterson next door knew my name, my brother's name, my parents, what my father did for work, what church we attended. She'd call my mother if she saw me doing something wrong. My mother would do the same for her kids. We didn't think of it as surveillance. We thought of it as belonging. When my father got sick, I was 12, the whole neighborhood showed up. Not with thoughts and prayers online. They came to the door with casseroles, with offers to mow the lawn, men who sat with my dad and just talked, women who sat with my mother in the kitchen and let her cry. That's what community actually does. It holds you. Now, I'm not naive. I know that world could also be suffocating, judgmental, narrow-minded, for people who were different, for black families in white neighborhoods, for gay people who couldn't be themselves. That community could be a prison. I don't romanticize it without acknowledging those real wounds and real injustices, but the principle underneath it, the human need for genuine connection, for being known by people who share physical space with you, that was real and it was good, because we were wired around that kind of connection, face to face, voice to voice. The way someone's expression changes when they're trying not to cry, the warmth of another person sitting beside you. And then in the second half of our lives, we were handed a device and told, here's how you connect now, through text, through emojis, through a little thumbs up button. I use it. I'm on it. I video call my grandchildren and I'm grateful. But there's a part of me that will never be satisfied by it, because I was raised on the real thing. I know the difference. And once you've had the real thing, a photograph of food never quite fills you up. When I was young, information was precious and rare. If you wanted to know something, you worked for it. You went to the library, found the right book, read it. That process, searching, reading deeply, building knowledge brick by brick, gave you more than information. It gave you judgment, the ability to think critically, to evaluate what you were reading and why. We didn't get to pick our news based on what confirmed what we already believed. We had 3 television networks and a local newspaper. Walter Cronkite told you what happened that day, and you believed him because he'd earned that trust over decades. I'm not saying old media was perfect. It wasn't. There was bias, stories that didn't get told, voices that were shut out. But there was a shared reality. We all started from the same set of facts. We might have disagreed about what to do, but we weren't living in completely separate universes of information, each one perfectly designed to make us angrier. That's what breaks my heart about today. We've lost a shared reality, and I don't know how you have a society and how you have a country without one. I met my wife Barbara in 1976. I saw her at a party. She was laughing at something, this big, full, joyful laugh. And I thought, I want to know what made her laugh like that. I didn't swipe right on her. I walked across the room, introduced myself, and asked if I could get her a drink. We talked for 3 hours about our lives, our families, music, whether there was life on other planets. Then I called her a week later and on the actual telephone, because I didn't want to seem too eager. We went on a real date. I picked her up, met her parents, had dinner, walked home. We've been married 46 years. I won't pretend it's been perfect. We've had hard years, years where the love felt more like a decision than a feeling. But we'd made a commitment, and the culture around us took commitment seriously, and we fought for it. We talked. We went to counseling. We learned each other over and over again as we both changed. That long, patient, sometimes painful fight to know another person deeply. I think it's one of the greatest things a human being can do. What worries me about relationships today is the paradox of choice. When there's always another option available in your pocket, it becomes very hard to commit to the difficult, beautiful work of truly knowing one person. Why work through this hard season when swiping left is so easy? I don't envy young people this. We had limits, and those limits, strange as it sounds, protected us. They forced us to invest, to stay, to go deeper. I remember the first time I really used the internet around 1997. I was in my early 40s. Someone at work showed me how to search for something on Alta Vista. I typed in my hometown, Dayton, Ohio, and information came back instantly. I felt two things at once. First, pure wonder. I thought, this changes everything. This is one of the greatest inventions in human history. Imagine what this means for education, for medicine, for people in remote places who never had access to libraries or universities. Imagine. The second feeling was harder to name, something like unease, a quiet sense that something was about to be lost, that a way of being human was about to change, and not entirely for the better. Both of those feelings were right. The internet has given us real miracles. I've watched a 17-year-old girl with no local resources teach herself to code from free online materials. I've watched my wife, who has a rare medical condition, connect with patients worldwide and share research her own doctor didn't know about. These are genuine goods. But we also got the infinite scroll. We got algorithms that figured out that outrage was more engaging than truth. We got an entire generation feeling like their lives were insufficient compared to curated images of other people's lives. We got the comment section. My generation adapts. We learn the tools. But we will never be native to this world. It was not the world our nervous systems were built in. And sometimes late at night I wonder what we gave up, what we traded without fully realizing we were trading it. I want to say something to anyone from my generation who might be watching, because sometimes I think we've been made to feel like relics, like we don't understand the new world, so maybe we have nothing of value to offer it. That is wrong. Dead wrong. We know how to be present. Before smartphones, presence wasn't a virtue. It was just what you did. You were where you were. Your mind was in the room. That skill is becoming increasingly rare, and we still have it. We can model it. We know how to sit with uncertainty. We grew up not being able to know everything instantly. We had to say, I'm not sure, let me look into that. We had to live in the question before we got to the answer. That's not a weakness, that's intellectual honesty. We know how to fix things. If the sink was dripping, you fixed it. If the car made a strange noise, you figured out why. We weren't raised to throw things away the moment they stopped working. We were raised to maintain, to repair, to make things last. And perhaps most importantly, we know that life was full and rich and worth living before any of this technology existed. We are living proof that a good human life doesn't require constant connectivity, that silence is not emptiness, that boredom is not suffering, that the greatest pleasures are often the simplest ones. That is not nothing, that is everything. My granddaughter asked me last Thanksgiving what I thought the best time to be alive was. Without hesitating, I said, "Right now." She looked at me like I was losing it. "But Grandpa, you're always talking about how much better things used to be." "No, sweetheart," I said. "I talk about how different things used to be, how much we've lost, and also how much we've gained. Both things are true. Because that's what 70 years teaches you, the ability to hold two things at once, to say, this world has real problems and this world has real wonders. I miss what was, and I'm grateful for what is, both at the same time. I was born into a world without Google, and I've lived to see humanity reach toward the stars. I grew up with 3 TV channels, and now I can learn about anything on Earth. I used to write letters by hand and wait weeks for a reply. And now I see my daughter's face from 2,000 miles away in real time. Both worlds live in me, the before and the after. And I believe that makes people like us, people who straddle those two worlds, valuable in ways we might not always recognize. We are the living memory of what it means to be human without all of this. We are proof that it's possible, that there was life before the feed, that people laughed and loved and thought and created and grieved and celebrated and found meaning without a single notification. That's not a small thing to carry. My name is Harold. I'm 70 years old. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I bagged groceries, fell in love, raised 3 kids, and watched the world change more in my lifetime than in any generation before me. And I'm still here, still thinking, still grateful for the fireflies.